Okay, we're continuing Shin Chav Ches Halacha Gimel. We started last time about the Shelichus for Hafrashas Challah, and we're going to continue this time with Shelichus in general for Hafrashas Challah and a few other things. It is after Purim already. Usually we do Pesach things now, so it's going to be about Pesach also. And that is similar to the Pesach. That's what we're talking about. Is that the most people don't ever have to think about the case of Shelichus for Hafrashas Challah. It's not such a common situation that people do that. We do that when we deal with companies. We give hashgacha to the company. So the owner is chayav in Hafrashas Challah, and we do it for him. We also do shlichus in cases, a very similar thing, which is for Trumas Mechiras. When a company has stuff from Eretz Yisrael, we need to be mafresh Trumas Mechiras. So we're not the owners, we have to be shluchim. But we also have to do it for mechiras chametz. Okay, we sell chametz for people, or we arrange for the sale of chametz for people. So these three things, these are three situations where we deal with having to be shluchim. So we talk about a couple of shadows that have to do with that. Not each question has to do with each one of those three cases, but by and large they do. Okay, so the first thing is that when you want to make someone to a shliach, there's no requirement that it has to be done in writing. You could just say to the guy, "Could you be my shliach?" You could do it by email. You could just, as long as you want to make the person a shliach. The Rambam says a person should do it in writing because it makes it show that the person means it for real. He takes it seriously. So we ask people to do like the mechiras chametz. They fill out a form is to make it seem real. When the guy says, Rabbi, you could sell my chametz, it's less serious than when the guy has to fill out a paper and sign his name and the whole spiel. So that's what we do it for. You're not really mechuyev to do it in writing. But the writing gives a certain seriousness, which is a good idea. Okay? That's why we tend to answer things in writing. Okay. That's about how you make the minu shlichus from that side. But the more serious question, which is what we're going to talk about more, is who's the person who's allowed to be mamanu a shliach to do this thing. Okay? So we have a few situations. Who does the minu shlichus? Who's the one from the company who says, Rabbi, I want you to do the hafrashah, I want you to do the mechiras chametz. Okay? So the first thing is like this. Two of the three cases that I mentioned to you, Hafrashas Challah and Hafrashas and mechiras chametz, are only negate to Jewish companies. Okay, both of those things are only if the company is owned by Yid. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a second. But one of the cases, Hafrashas Trumas Mechiras, is negate even if the company is not Jewish. Okay, so at first glance we would say it appears that if the company is owned by someone who's not Jewish, Goyim are excluded from the din of shlichus. Then they can't be shlichim, they can't be shliach, and they can't be mishalech. They can't do either side of it. So Mamela, when they have to do that first Trumas Mechiras, and they can't say, they cannot make you into a shliach and say, you be my shliach to be my first Trumas Mechiras. The guy can't make you into a shliach. So in the case of mechiras chametz and in the case of Hafrashas Challah, it's a Yid who owns the company. But over here, where it's potentially a not Jewish company, like the case that we dealt with, so he can't be mani or shliach. Okay, so the way that it's usually taken care of. Okay, so before I get to the way it's usually taken care of, I'll mention to you. I mentioned this to Rabbi Friedman. He said to me, he pointed to me to a Harpsvi, where Tzvi Pesach says that what you can do is like this. He says the din is you can be mafresh Trumas Mechiras b'machshava. You just have to think, the truma should be here and like that. You don't have to actually do anything physical to do hafrashas Trumas Mechiras. So he says that if the guy says to the Yid, I want you to do hafrashas truma, but not to be my shliach. He specifically says, I don't want you to be my shliach, but I want you do it, and whatever you do, that's what I'm trying to do. I don't know how to be mafresh trumas. So the Yid says, okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to say that you owner have in mind that this thing that I separated means the following. So in other words, like the Yid is like leading the guy along of what he has to do, then the guy is doing the hafrasha, and the Yid is just doing the steps, not as a shliach. He's doing the steps just to direct him, to teach him what he's supposed to do. If he would know how to do the hafrasha, he doesn't know how to do the hafrasha, and he doesn't actually he doesn't have to do anything physically.
Just say the nusach that.
You're right. I guess he could say the nusach, or he says right, but he says with the Yid who will physically do the actions, the pulling the pieces apart and doing the things, talking out for the guy. Really, you're doing this, and I'm just the robot who's doing the moving things around and like that. He says that would be good enough. Okay. He says he makes a point here that you have to specifically say you're not being a shliach. Okay. If you say you're being a shliach, then you are a shliach. He cannot be. don't remember.
I
don't remember. Okay. So that's not talking about a shliach? That's not talking about a shliach? That's talking about regular? I don't remember. Okay, I don't know. There's something else from Chaim Kanievsky that he showed me, which is not for now. I'm not really sure what it says. Okay, I'm going to leave that for the start. Okay. So the way we usually do it, but that put on...
You're not quoting anybody that deals with the question directly.
Rick Pesach was talking about that.
He's talking about
He says, what do we do? The guy goes around being Hafrashas and mechiras, the Batat's representative, whoever goes around, well, it's the store's owned by a guy. Well, how can he be his shliach? That's what he's talking about, exactly that case. Okay? But what we usually do is, we say is that the instead of the yid being the shliach of the guy to do the hafrasha, we say is the yid takes ownership of the produce in order to do the hafrasha. So that is to say is the guy can give him his produce, and once the guy gives it to him, now it's the mashgiach's own produce. He can do the hafrasha. Technically, Pasha says technically he would be good enough if he just owned like about 20% of the produce, which is to say he has to own enough to do the hafrashas on. We spoke about last time that it can sign that if it's your own produce, you can be marfash on somebody else's through zachin if it's yours. So really, what? We talked about that last time. So really, it would be enough. We talked about. So really, it would be enough. It would be enough if the yid would own the 20%. That gets very complicated. The 20% I mean is because you have to do a little bit for truma, and then about 10% for meiser, and then the second meiser, the meiser sheni, the meiser ani is about another 9%. So it comes out to roughly 20%. But the simpler thing is usually that he should take the full ownership of everything. But in order to do that, you have to do it for real. Okay, so in order to do that, the yid's going to have the mashgiach who's doing this hafrasha has to make the right kinyanim. Okay, so the simplest, so to speak, the right kinyan to make is he should make mois and mashiach and hagbah. That's what he should do to really make the kinyan. That's not so realistic. Like if you have 30,000 pounds of watermelon seeds to make a kinyan on, that's not so simple. So then use other kinyanim, you do situmta and dina machusadina and mois to make a kinyan chotzer on it. It's not so much that works. And mois with agav, different. Right. I'm agreeing. I'm not saying anything different. I'm going through this very fast. I'm just mentioning that you have to make all these bunch of kinyanim. If you could make mois and mashiach, mois and hagbah, then you'd be fine. But realistically, that's not so easy to do that.
My dinner was here. He suggested making a hagbah with a forklift.
Right, you can make hagbah with a forklift. That's true, but it's not always so easy. Okay, that's not so easy. Again, when you're dealing with one big, if you have one big of apples, that's one thing. But when you have 30,000 pounds of watermelon seeds, it's not so simple. Okay, so you have a lot to do. Okay, you can do it. Okay, now
they got pull the stick in the paddle. You just push the button to raise the paddle.
There we go. Okay, so now you hit him. You hit him to make him go up, right? Then, okay. Anyhow, so then of course. This is not really relevant to right now, but of course, once you're finished, you have to take care of the stuff. Okay. Either it is or it's not Shulchan Kabbalah. In that case, it was not Shulchan Kabbalah. I don't remember. We found out whether it was or not Shulchan Kabbalah. So you have to deal with it then after. That's not really get to the Shelichus part of it. Okay. So that's if in the case of Hafrashas Shulchan or mechiras, if the owner was not Jewish, you have to deal with it. Okay. But assuming that the owner is Jewish, like for example, for Hafrashas Challah, or for mechiras chametz, when the owner is Jewish, or even Jewish or mechiras, if the owner is Jewish, there's a second question which is like this: what happens if the owner is he's a yid, but he's a mumar? Okay, would he be able to be memani or shliach? He's not a guy, but he's a mumar. Would he be able to be memani or shliach? So there's a machlokes like this. The Magen Avraham brings from Taisus that a mumar is a yid. He's considered to be a yid still, but he's not considered to be a ben bris. When the Gemara says that a shliach has to be a ben bris, the Gemara says ma atem b'nei bris af shluchachem b'nei bris. A mumar is excluded from that. From he can't do that because he's not a ben bris. Okay, he's not a ben. The drasha is ma atem b'nei bris af shluchachem b'nei bris. The shliach has to be a ben bris. So a mumar is a yid, but he's not a ben bris, and therefore he can't be a shliach. So
he can't but he can appoint it.
No, either. He's not in the parsha Shelichus. Okay, so that's the Magen.
The Mumar for, let's say he's a Gemalas.
No, that has to do with physically whether he's a ben bris or not ben bris. It's a quality.
So he would circumcise his kid. He would give bris to his kids.
But if he's a mumar, then he's out of the qualification, out of the quality. Whether the fact that he's circumcised.
Different levels of mumar, different things, different levels of mumar. Okay. No, that's not so bad. The Canadian says it's shlichus because it's kind of bris.
Okay. So
He also keeps the mitzvahs.
Okay, so he asks a question. So the Magen Avraham asks a kasha. He says, Tosfos says that he's not a ben bris. So he says, how come you go in Hilchos Gittin? The Ramah says that a mummer could be a shliach for a get. Okay, so he bothers. How come the Ramah says that a mummer could be a shliach for a get? He gets kasha on what he's saying. He says it's based on Tosfos. He says, so why did the Ramah say that a mummer could be a shliach? Forget. So he says, the best I can tell you is that it depends what kind of a mummer you are. If you're a mummer lahachas or mummer l'te'avon. He says, maybe the Ramah is only allowing a mummer to be a shliach if he's a mummer l'te'avon. But a mummer lahachas, that's the kind of mummer who's not a ben bris. Okay? The Magen Avraham is not so thrilled with that answer. Okay? But that's the best that he could come up with that answer. Okay, I mean, there's a diak in Tosfos that he's talking about a mummer lahachas. The Ramah doesn't tell you any indication that he means only certain kinds of mummer. Okay. That's what the Magen Avraham says. The Even Ozer, Pirush on the Magen Avraham, brings a Beis Shmuel who says like the Magen Avraham, who Taka says like the Magen Avraham says, but Even Ozer himself is very strong that he does not agree with. He does. Everyone's busy. Everyone. That's fine. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, okay. You got apples, right? You're also busy. Okay. So the Even Ozer says not like he does not agree. He does not agree with the Magen Avraham, and he goes and he says. Now, I don't exactly understand what he's trying to say, but he brings a Chuvas Edition, who says that a mummer could make a shliach to give a get. Okay, and he said, and the Mechaber brings this Chuvas Edition. Okay, so I'm not sure why he thought that was like more of a kasha on the Magen Avraham than what the Magen Avraham said himself. The Magen Avraham himself said that the Ramah says not like him, and he answered by saying that this mummer yes and this mummer no. So I'm not sure why he thought more by bringing the Chuvas Edition. There's no more. What? That's what the Magen Avraham asks. That the Ramah is not like Tosfos. So the Magen Avraham wants to answer. The Magen Avraham wants to answer that's a different kind of mummer. So now the Even Ozer brings a kasha on the Magen Avraham because I see a Chuvas Edition who says that a mummer can make a shliach for a get. Okay, we had that question already. What the Mumar answered that question. He said, "That's what kind of mummer you are." So I'm not sure why he thought there was more of a kasha from Chuvas Edition than from Tosfos. I'm not sure why he's like, look at the Shulchan Aruch brings this from a Chuvas Edition. Yeah, so the Magen Avraham answered that question. You don't like the answer. You don't like the answer, but let's bring another riot to it. I didn't see what he was doing that. But anyhow, so Even Ozer has his own pshat, a chiddush in what the Gemara says. And when the Gemara says, the Even Ozer says a mummer can make a shliach. He says like this: when the Gemara says that ma'atem b'nei bris afshul chacham b'nei bris, what the Gemara means is like this: there are two qualities that most Yidden have. He's a Yid, and he's a ben bris. If you have one of those qualities, that's enough to let you be a shliach, to become someone else's shliach. As long as you have one similarity with the person who sent you, that's enough. So the mummer is not a ben bris. That's true. Tosfos says the mummer is not a ben bris. Okay, he's not a ben bris, but he's a Yid. Tosfos makes the point. He is a Yid, so if he's a Yid, and I'm a Yid, so I can send him as my shliach. So he might be not a ben bris, but you don't need both things together. When it says ma tem b'nei bris af shulchacham b'nei bris, it means
ben bris is not a Yid.
So I'm getting that. So he says, having one, I'm getting that in a second. So he says, so having one qualification is good enough. That Even Ozer says, and the middle of the woman could be a shliach, he can make a shlichus, and that's all fine. Now, that's what he says. So he argues the Magen Avraham. Okay, so before I get back to what it has to do with us, I'll just tell you an interesting Rikvega. The Rikvega says, I have a raya to the Even Ozer. Okay, the Gemara says in Gittin like this. The Gemara says that a guy can't be a shliach for get, because they're lav ben bar hetera. He's lav bar hetera. Okay, that means he doesn't give a get to his wife. The way a guy and his wife separate is not through a get. They're not in the parsha of Gittin, and therefore he can't be a shliach for a get because he's lav bar hetera. He's not in that parsha. So Rikvega says, why did you want to say that? Why did you say he can be a shliach? Because he can never be a shliach. Goyim are not included in the parsha of shlichus. So why did the Gemara have to say that Goyim are lav b'nei hetero? He's a lav bar hetero. What's the reason for that? Why did you say? Because he's not a shliach. A Goyim can never be a shliach. So he says like this. He says there's a Shach and the Nesivos say that even though Goyim are not in the parsha of shlichus, I can't make a Goy a shliach and he can't make a shliach. Two Goyim can make each other shluchim. A Goy can make another Goy into a shliach. What's the reason why two Goyim can make a guy to make another guy a shliach? Because matem b'nei bris avtem shluchachim b'nei bris doesn't mean is that the shliach has to be a ben bris. It means is that the mashalech and the shliach have to be of equal status. So a yid can send another yid, and a guy can send another guy. So they're equal status. They're both not b'nei bris. They're both not yidin, and they can be shluchim for each other. We can be shluchim for each other. But for me to send the guy, for a guy to send me, we're not the same. So we can't send. He says we can't. No. The Shach and the Tzivas say that a guy can send another guy as a shliach. That's the Shach and the Tzivas. That a guy can send another guy as a shliach because they're similar enough. So he says. Now, according to Ibn Oizer, what happens if a Mumar wants to send the guy as a shliach? So the Mumar and the guy have something in common. They're both not b'nei bris. And the Ibn Oizer said you only have to have one thing in common. You don't have to have both things. You don't have to be. Your Jewishness and your B'nai Bris don't have to both be in common. Only one of them has to be in common. So the Mumar and the guy have something in common. They're both not B'nai Bris. So, and according to Evan that one is enough. So really a Mumar could send the guy to be his shliach. So if you want to know why is a guy not able to be a shliach for Gittin, don't say because guy not kosher for shlichus. It's not true. Because a guy could be a shliach. Because a guy could be sent by a Mumar. If the Mumar wants to be Megarish his wife, he could send the guy to be his shliach to make the gerushin. And therefore, therefore, the reason why the Gemara has to say that the law of Bnei Hatera is because there would be cases that a guy would be able to be a shliach for a gerushin, and therefore, according to Evan we understand, so the Gemara has to come up with a different reason, which is law bar hatera. He's not in the parsha of gerushin and the Mamela. That's why he can't be a shliach. That's what Kriega says.
The Gemara says it for Evan.
The Gemara says it for other reasons, but he's focusing on why is he for a guy. The Gemara says for a few people. So that's what Kriega says. He says it's a right to Evan Oizer from that Gemara of that guy law bar hatera. That's what Kriega says.
It's not good. What is he referring?
When Ktoi says he's not a ben bris, he just says he's not a ben bris. I don't think he's talking about shlichus. No, he just now to finish or repeat. This is Rabbi Kiva says. What I told you so far, that's what Rabbi Kiva says. So I'll just tell you that if now we can say l'shitasari that the reason why the Magen Avraham doesn't agree with the Evan Oizer, the reason why the Magen Avraham, so the Evan Oizer now has a raya from this Gemara Gittin to what he said. The reason why the Magen Avraham doesn't agree is because the Magen Avraham in Tafsas Pesach argues on the shach that I told you. The Magen Avraham says that a guy cannot make another guy into a shliach. Okay, so the whole raya from that Gemara came from because Kriega says because if you say like the Shach and then the Sivas that one guy can make another guy into a shliach, then we have this shot into this Gemara that la bar hatera. Magen Avraham l'shitasa, that's a Hilchos Pesach Magen Avraham, says that a guy cannot make another guy into a shliach, and the male if he can't make another guy into a shliach, the whole raya from this Gemara Gittin falls apart. Okay.
But the Mumar is the best shliach.
Again,
he could be a shliach for
the Mumar could go both ways. He's very flexible. He could. Okay, fine. So now, which is where we come back to and coming to. That's where we started from. I know I distracted because I wanted to Kriega because I thought it was interesting. But back to where we were coming from, which was, according to Evan Oizer, then the Mumar could make me a shliach. If the person who owns the company is a Mumar who wants to sell his chametz or who wants to do Hafrashas Challah or Hafrashas Shulas Meiser, according to Evan Oizer, that Mumar could make me into a shliach. Because the Mumar will be allowed to make me a shliach. Because again, he says his Mumar are allowed to make are in the parsha shlichus. I guess for everybody, for goyim and for yidden. Okay, even according to Magen Avraham, who said that they're not in the parsha shlichus, that's only if he's a Mumar lahachas. Okay, which seemingly a lot of them would qualify for it. Not a Mumar tiyavan, but of course, I'll remind you that we talked about when we learned Pas Yisrael that many of the Acharonim say that the people who are not practicing Jewishly is the way they're supposed to be, those people don't qualify as Mumrim. Okay, we talked about that way some time ago. Lots of those people don't qualify as Mumrim. They're just Tinich Nisbas, they don't qualify as Mumrim, so then this whole thing wouldn't be negay anyhow. Okay, but if we would have a Mumr, or we would say these people are Mumrim, then according to Evan Oizer, they would allowed to be Memanas or Shluchim. According to Magen Avraham, if they're Mumr Lahachas, they would not be allowed to. Okay. Excuse me, next. Okay, so now, we figured out we don't have a Goyish owner. We don't even have a Mumar who's an owner. Well, we took care why a Mumar can make a shliach. Now the question is, what happens if the person, the owner is a yid, okay? But the owner is not the person who I deal with. Okay, the mashgiach who comes in there to do the hafrasha, to do the mechira, the owner doesn't have time for him. The owner doesn't see him. The owner's 1,000 miles away, And the person who's doing the minui, the person who's asking me to do that, to do the hafrasha, to do the mechiras chametz, that person is not Jewish. Okay, he's the manager of the company who does everything else in the company. He does everything else in the company, but he's not a yid. Okay, so the question is, how does that fall into his being able to make me a shliach, or how does that fit into this mix of it? Okay, so I'll first tell you two reasons that were suggested that were not so convincing.
So again, we're trying to figure out how the manager was a guy can
make me into a shliach. He wants to sell the chametz, or he wants me to. I mean, we're getting mechiras chametz forms from companies. Who signed that form? Who did that appointment? Was whoever the manager was. It came to the kosher contact. He signed the paper here. Someone
because he's a guy, because he's a manager.
Because he's a guy. No, because he's a guy. Because he's not a person who's
manager. He wouldn't be asking.
Well, I'm going to get to Jewish man in a second, but pashas we wouldn't have a problem. We'll see that in a second. We shouldn't have a problem. Okay, so either for the hafrasha, or for the hafrashas Challah, or for the mechiras chametz.
I mean, he's more than a shliach. He's a pilot of the Mumar.
Oh, that's my first one. So that was the first of the two reasons I was going to tell you, which is not good. Okay, that's good. Well, everyone's going to have it. Okay, there's Machna Ephraim. Machna Ephraim says that the Machna Ephraim says that even though there's all kinds of halachos of shlichus, the Gemara says yad poel yad baal bayis, and therefore a poel could do as if he's the baal bayis. You don't have to be the shliach of the baal bayis. A poel, I mean, who's a paid worker, can do. He and the baal bayis are the same thing, so he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have to do partial.
I don't think it's insane question. Could you imagine if the manager was selling something to the business? Could you buy it from him, or is it gazelle?
You can buy it from him.
Okay, so so why can't you sell it? Why can't you sell it? Why can't you sell the chametz?
I'm going to answer you patient the whole week. I'm going to answer you patient another 5 minutes. I'm going to get to what you said in a second. Just be poor. Just be patient. A whole week? No, because last week he was already grumbling about it. Okay, but the truth is, there's a lot of Acharonim who don't agree with the Machna Ephraim. We could ask Rishus walked in. He could tell us whether we think that is or is not the din. Machna Ephraim says it's a chiddush to say that yad poel yad bayis means he doesn't have to be a shliach. Pashas, there's the rules of shlichus. Shlichus means that's what the rules are. Okay, there's lots of Acharonim who don't agree with that. So it's not so great to say that we're doing it because of that. Now, what I'm going to tell you in a minute, which is just he's waiting for, is going to be very similar to that, but it's not going to be through those rules. Okay, now there's another one which is we thought had more to it, which was there's a din called harsha. Okay, the Gemara in Baba Kama has a machlokes whether harsha means like I give you permission to do something for me, whether that is or is not shlichus. The din is that it is. We pass that it is shlichus. So when we would look at it at first, harsha wouldn't seem to make any better. Harsha is shlichus, and goyim are not shlichus. Okay, but that's not the truth. The truth is that goyim are allowed to do harsha. Okay, goyim are allowed to do harsha, and the reason is because it's a takonos chacham that a goy should be allowed to do a harsha, and that's because it helps people collect their money. Okay, you send the guy to go collect your money from some other city, so a guy is allowed to do harsha even though he's not for parsha shlichus, and even though harsha is shlichus, harsha works anyhow. Okay, so there's a machlokes. That's fine when a yid asks a guy to do something. Okay, so like for example, if the yid, I'm not up to you yet, but if the yid tells the guy, you could collect my loan for me, or maybe you'd say you could sell something in my store for me, then if the harsha would work because it's the concept to help the yid. So the machlokes in the there's a shaila in a machlokes in the Achronim, the Shachronim, the machlokes, whether it works the other way around. What happens if the guy wants to send the yid as a harsha? Okay, so it's a kula to let the guy be do work harsha for me. So one of the I think Marashtam says, he says, well, it doesn't work the other way around. It's not helping Takanas help the yid, not to help the guy. So Mamela, it wouldn't help if you did it. And the Shachmanis, others who say no. Once they're in the parasha, and it works in here. Okay, so at first you might say is whether the so again we have a yid, the owner, who asks the guy to ask the yid to do mechiras chametz, so that the yid should ask the guy. Everyone would seemingly allow the guy to do that. It's for the benefit of the yid. Whether the guy can then turn around and ask the yid, can you do this mechir for me, would maybe depend on this machlokes, whether harsha works both directions. Does it help for guy to be the mursha or the marsha? Okay, the person who makes the harsha. What? The marsha. Okay, now, but this is a mistake. Because the Shach also says that you can only use harsha. Harsha is meant as a way to collect loans. For people who want, say, to avoid, there's a taina of labal dvarim diyad. What are you doing coming to collect the guy's money? I don't have to talk to you. I don't owe you the money, I owe him the money. So there's a special takanot for that case. But to say to use Harsha for other things, in his case it's for selling property, no such thing. You can't use it just whenever you want to. There are regular rules of Shelichus. Harsha is a special thing for collecting loans, and the mail, you can't use it for sales and things like that. You can't use it for that. And in fact, there's a choice. The Kashrus is, of course, a Kashrus, but it's brought in Aruch in mechiras chametz, that the Kashrus says if you ask a guy to sell your chametz for you, okay, he says it doesn't work. He says even though the guy is using, he uses the word, even though the guy is telling me Hafrashas shall Yisrael, okay, he uses that word because he doesn't want to say Shelichus, because of course it's not a Sheliach. Even if it comes Hafrashas shall Yisrael, it doesn't work anything, and it's brought in all the Achronim in mechiras chametz. That doesn't work, and if you did it Hafrashas of the guy, it's worthless, and the chametz is also have to pay Pesach. Okay, so this idea that maybe it should work, the Yid can have the guy's manager be his Baharsha, and then the guy will ask the Yid Baharsha, it's not going to work, doesn't work for mechiras. So that's flopped. Okay, that didn't work either. Okay, so we asked Rebelsky, what do you think about this? How do you get the guy to sign the form? I mean, all these forms that are coming in, they're checking that they signed mechiras chametz. They weren't signed by the owner. No one's checking. They didn't ask him for his what is it called? What's the paper we sent to the rabbinate that says you're Jewish? We don't ask the guy for his $2 that says that he's a Yid. Whoever signed the paper, we're happy. We take the paper. Okay. So Rebelsky said, this is what Yossi been waiting for. Rebelsky said he says, listen. He says when the owner hired this manager, okay, the owner brought in someone and says, you run my store for me. Okay, you run my business for me. It's implicit in when he hired this person is whatever you do, I want to do. So if you go ahead and you sell someone a pair of socks and you sell the socks in the store for me, it's as if I sold it. Everything that you do, it's as if I'm doing that thing. Everything that you choose, everyone who you appoint, everything that you do, whatever you do, it's my agreement from Mirosh that whatever you do, I'm agreeing to. That's why I hired you. I say, this is your job. You stay here every day for these times, and whatever you do, it's as if I wanted to do it. Okay, so it's like a super. It's like whatever you say, I'm masking to whatever you're going to do.
So what's the
You don't need Shelichus. You don't need Shelichus.
So what it is? So what it is? So he's saying is that it's as if the owner is dealing directly with the new. Let's in our case is this amount. Selling socks is a little more complicated. Let's say mechiras chametz. Mechiras. What do you say?
It really isn't.
Really isn't. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll have a bias here about Mrs. Selling socks. Okay. So when I say when the guy signs the paper that says, we want you, please sell all the chametz for us. It's as if the Yid had agreed to have his chametz being sold. Okay, so in the case of mechiras chametz is the easiest case. He wants Rabbi Matanki, or whoever does the mechira, Rabbi Reitz, I don't know who does the actual physical mechira, Rabbi Reitz, he said, Rabbi Reitz, I want you to sell my chametz. Now the Yid doesn't even know that he's selling his chametz to him. But he said, I agree to anything my manager decides for the company, that's what I agreed to. And he agreed that we should sell the chametz. We should have Rabbi Reitz sell the chametz. Okay, so we agreed to it. So the owner himself is agreeing to it. It's as if the owner himself told you could do the shlichus. Okay, he never said it, but it's as if he agreed to that. Okay, with Hafrashas, it's a little more complicated. That's what Rabbi Belsky was to say. Rabbi Shechter was like, he was looking exactly like Rabbi Reitz. He looked just like the same face. He's like, Dad is like, oh, we as the mechanics over here.
What's the problem? I don't understand the problem.
Because
if I want you to be kind of something of mine, right?
Yes.
I don't need to be there. I just need to say lech chazay kikni.
Okay.
That's all. And you do the kinyan. You go do the kinyan.
Okay, so you say...
Because this the owner made a big announcement for now in perpetuity. I'm announcing. I have a guy sitting in my store doing all kinds of transactions. It's like I'm saying, whatever he says, I'm giving permission to...
So in Kinyanim, okay, then we would save the socks. In Kinyanim, that's easier to say. In Kinyanim, you're right, there's such a thing as lech chazay kikni, because the kohen can make the kinyan without the machna. He could do it by himself. Let's say Hafrashas truma.
What kind of kinyan you're making? So you get kinyan chutz of the chametz, right? You kind of the chutz. Who's doing the kinyan on the chutz? The guy.
The buyer is making kinyan on his basement. The guy's making kinyan on it. He doesn't get owned for that.
He gives kesef.
He has to give to the right person. Okay, so you're right. So as soon as we run into issues where we need both people involved, like in Hafrashas, I have to be mamani or shliach. I can't just say, well, we talked about the list. Maybe I can say, whoever wants it to be mafresh. But we run into sometimes we need both parties. We need both people involved in it.
What times do we need both parties?
Like you said, some kinyan need both people. You have to give mois to the person. You can't just throw money onto the floor and say, I made a kinyan mois. You have to give money from the buyer to the seller.
How's the owner owner getting the money.
Yes, so a Shelichus would let the owner get the money, but there's no Shelichus over there.
Put the money in the chatzah of the Balabais, and then the Balabais get the chatzah.
Yeah, but Rabbi Risa does the chatzah of the Balabais. He's only that if he's the Sheliach of the Balabais. Then we can say, oh, he's like the Balabais. He's not the Balabais. He's just a Sheliach. But so
the guy comes in with the chametz, is that? So you go into the guy's house.
Right. So if there's such a thing, if there's such a thing that we could say, Rabbi Reese is the shliach of the owner, even though the owner and Rabbi Reese don't know each other, and they never had any connection. That's what he's trying to say. The owner said, if you make Rabbi Reese a shliach, I want Rabbi Reese to be my shliach. So that's as if he was Mumar Rabbi Reese a shliach. By whatever the guy decides, it's as the owner decides.
It should work.
Right. So the owner is being maskim to any minui, anything that the manager does. It's as if the owner did it himself. It sounds very familiar to Yad Balbais, right? That sounds very familiar to that idea. What he's saying is that the poil, it's as if the Balbais is, when the poil says, Rabbi Reese, I want you to be my shliach, really he means I want you to be the shliach for Mr. Bernstein, who owns the company. Right? So that's where Rabbi Pelsky there's such a thing. Okay, I don't know enough to tell you that. Rabbi Shechta made faces like this, which was, he says, it doesn't work like that. You can't agree to whatever meaning you'll do, whatever kinyan you'll do, that should work like he's in perpetuity. Whatever the guy does, it should work for that. Okay, so I don't know enough to tell you yes or no. Okay, they disagree as to whether you could do such a thing. To set something up that says, whatever Beryl says, that's what I want to be my das from now and forever.
All he needs is das, and he's giving, all he needs is das company. He obviously gives us das company. I sent a guy in my store to do all kinds of things. Okay. It's my das company to do it.
Okay. So, I can argue with you. I don't know enough to argue with you. Okay.
So the guy would sell a business?
Yeah, if you would tell him.
No, because I obviously understand that there's some limitations to it.
That's true. Right. But there's implicit rules of this is what you can do, what you can't do, and within those rules, I agree to everything he chooses to do. Okay, I mean, what happens if a person walks into the store and we give him a discount? Okay, the manager says, usually it's $1 for a pair of socks, so you use 50 cents. So the owner agrees to that. If he's authorized, if it's within his range of things to do, then he agrees with it. You want to return it even though there was no reason.
You're saying it's like a minoy merosh. In other words, when you hire this person, you're telling this person this is the range of activities you can conduct. So it's like as if the Balabais himself has made all those minuyim.
All those decisions. All decisions were made.
He's done it all. He's done all of those, actions.
Himself. But you don't need shlichus. I'm saying it works as far as when you talk, don't need the shlichus because
even if the Balabais doesn't enunciate, I want this particular deal to be done. I want this particular, shlichus to be appointed. It's as if he's already said all of that. That's why Dayan Hilchos get in sometimes with respect to somebody makes a minoy of a particular shliach, let's say give over the get, and then the shliach dies. And sometimes we say, okay, so it was as if he
didn't
listened and understood that whoever the Bezin appoints as the shliach, he doesn't know the first shliach that the Bezin brought, he doesn't know the second shliach, so it's as if he appointed the second shliach too.
So okay, now Rabbi Shechta, who was not happy with his plan, he said, look, he says, but in some of these cases it could work with Zachan. Okay, so we talked about it last time, whether Zachan could work. And can I do it it's most appropriate to, he's talking about here for the Hafrashas Challah and Hafrashas Shumas, that you could do it with Zachan. We talked about that last time, whether it could or could not work. Maybe Zachan doesn't work with Zachan Me'adam, but maybe it could work if the took the Tevel. Okay, so we might save ourselves from the Zachan problem. We talked about this last time. Maybe you can make it, everyone maybe would agree that Zachan Sharuk Torah himself says that Zachan works. So it's not so bad to use Zachan. That doesn't work, of course, for mechiras chametz. But then people came with a different angle. They said, well, yeah, for mechiras chametz, it's also zachan adam. So you should own chametz. Okay, we're doing him a favor by not having own chametz. That in itself is very questionable, because if you went to the owner and said to the owner, meaning owner who didn't sell his chametz, who doesn't care about owning chametz and Pesach, said to the owner, would you rather own chametz and Pesach, or would you rather be a ganav? Which one would you rather be? Because you realize if we sell you chametz and you keep doing business with it, then you're a ganav. So we say to you, person who doesn't care about the din, would you care more? Would you rather be own chametz and Pesach, or would you rather be a ganav? So most people would say, I'd rather own chametz and Pesach, because if he doesn't care about din, stealing is something that most people don't want to do, or at least they'll tell you they don't want to do that. They don't want to steal, but most people don't care about it. Most people who don't care about the din don't want to care chametz. So to say, is it a zachin for the guy to say you won't own chametz? In truth, that might be a schiyah for him, but from his perspective, it might not be a schiyah. Okay, that's balanced with the fact that he wants to be kosher. So if he wants to be kosher, he has to do this. Maybe he is willing to that. He's willing to be a ganav as long as it helps him be kosher, and then he will own chametz and Pesach. Okay, that's a question about that. But the Rabbi Shechta said, for the mechiras chametz, we're better from a different angle, and that's because even though the manager might not be able to do kinyanim, because he's not Jewish, he can't be the shliach to do kinyanim. He says, but there are kinyanim that he can do. Okay, and those are the kinyanim of situmta and din de machusa. Okay, because from the perspective of the din de machusa, what's the law on the land? What's the perspective of the situmta of how people do business? Of course, managers are allowed to do transactions. That's of course understood that the manager of the company can do transactions. So situmta and din de machusa, when he says, I'm selling the chametz, from the perspective of, from the legal, I mean the American law perspective, and from the situmta perspective, it was a perfect transaction. No one questioned that. He says, so now we run into a bunch of different machlokes, a whole bunch of machlokes. First of all, are those kinyan deraisa d'Rabbanan? Let's say they're only d'Rabbanan. Some hold that there's a machlokes whether a kinyan d'Rabbanan helps you get away from the isser bal yirah. Even if the kinyan d'Rabbanan doesn't help you get away from bal yirah, there's a third machlokes, which is maybe a kinyan d'Rabbanan is enough to get you away from chametz of Pesach. It may not save you from the deraisa of Bal Yirah, but it might save you from the D'Rabbanan or chametz of Pesach. Okay, so actually, we'll make about most of those shilos. Okay, the Mishabura, in the Mishabura side of it, says that situmta is a deraisa. Okay, in the Bialacha, he's not so sure, but the Mishabura in his side, in there says it's a din deraisa. The Mishabura also says that for sure it's for chametz of Pesach. Okay, which is, again, from our perspective, given hashkacha, we care about his neshama, but our job is to care that the food is kosher. So from the food being chametz of Pesach, we're more covered. Rabbi Shachar was happy with that. He said, look, really the best thing would be is to go back to the real owner and say, Mr. Real Owner of the Yid, please sign the mechiras chametz for him. But if he didn't, and the manager signed it, then he was satisfied at least for the lamaisa, for the food, that the food would be okay.
Why did Shach have a problem only with selling chametz as opposed to the manager selling anything else, any other thing that we don't say together?
So for everything else, the situmta and the din machusa allow it. You're allowed to.
What about Yisrael? What about din Yisrael?
I mean, could if it was run just with the regular din?
Manager can sell widgets, but why can't he sell chametz? Why widgets okay and chametz is a problem?
So your question is, would I be allowed to walk into a store that was, if the Yid had a manager, a not Jewish manager there, he owned a little store, can I ask him, can I buy something from him, would I be allowed to do that? Okay, I'm not sure. So your question is, would I be allowed to? So you say, it's obvious that I'm allowed to.
I never heard such a shayla.
Okay. So you're favoring what Rebelski said, which is, the owner is willing to sell you whatever you want to.
Here, it doesn't work for that. That's a sugya. You know,
he's a regular guy wants to buy a loaf of bread. Walk in the store, can I buy a loaf of bread? So you're happy to buy from him.
Yeah.
I want to buy a loaf of bread from a store that's owned by a Yid, and the guy is at the cash register. How am I doing it? The guy at the cash register can't register.
If the Rabbanah works, it's fine for
right, but he said, but would it be true that on a deraisa level it would work?
You can't switch with it. You could not get the
okay.
You can have you can't switch with it.
If you walk out that loaf of bread, you couldn't give contribution with that because it's not yours for deraisa. Okay. So one last little thing.
I understand. There's such a thing, but I don't think in this case of when you bought something to the store, the manager. Well, did you ever buy a chuppah when the Bechad Kedushin is? Did you buy this Did you buy this free? Did you buy this free and put it in the store with the Kedushin manager? Why not?
That's a good question. Okay. So at the next house, when you get somebody who goes to the next goes is very married, so you go by the next house by his daughter, by his you go and say to him, who did you buy the ring from? You say, excuse me, I have something to say. Did you buy the ring from a manager owner? So you only married according to situmta. You know, this is only a wedding according to situmta. You have one sheet and 2 sheets in the barrel of it's the rice. Okay. So one last thing to say, which is very sort of like passed it by, which was someone asked, maybe we should have a shayla here of mila mimsui l'shliach. Okay, which is to say is, what happens if the right person was mana David Oppenheimer, say, Rabbi Oppenheimer, you do Hafrashas Challah for me. Or he says, Rabbi Reese, you do mechiras chametz. Okay, and that person's not available that day. Okay, he's not going to be there one day, and he asks somebody else to do that. Okay, is there a problem that he's the shliach? However we got to this point, he's the shliach. So now Rabbi Oppenheimer is the shliach to Hafrashas Challah. One day he's not feeling well, so he says, Yossi, can you do me a favor? Could you read this nusach for all these companies? I'm not feeling well. I'm going to be out of the country. Could you do this Hafrashas for me? Okay, so is that a problem that one shliach can't make somebody else into a shliach? Okay, so the Sefer Mishpei Eretz, okay, contemporary Sefer, he brings a whole long list of achronim who talk about the shayla, whether for Hafrashas Trumas or Maises there's a problem one person being mad at somebody else. There's a base mayor who says you can't. Okay, but everybody else who we quote says that you can. If you want to hear some names, it'll make you feel better. Marid, then Chasam Sofer, and Lavosh, and Matan Herzog from Zalman, and Chaim Kanievsky, all who think that you can be, that it's okay for it to be Ma'aner Shliach. So it would be okay for one person to pass it on to somebody else and say, I'm the shliach to do this, you could do it also. Some of those Acharonim that I mentioned say it's only okay if they said you could pass it on to somebody else if you want to. Okay, but just sort of assume that you're allowed to. But I'll just come back to where we came from, which is if the whole way that Rabbi Abraham became the shliach was through zachin, or through an understanding that whatever these people do, the real owner wants. If we think about how he became a shliach, chances are that passes on to the next person also. Okay, let's think Zachan. If he's doing the Hafrashas because of Zachan well then, if Rabbi landed to do the Zachan is just as good as Rabbi Abraham. It doesn't make a difference. Zachan is Zachan. Okay, there's nothing unique about him that makes it more Zachan. If it was because whatever the owner says, whatever they do, I'm in favor for that helps. Whatever helps my business. So he doesn't care if it's this rabbi, that rabbi. It's all the same kind of thing. So, but again, even if not, even had been a formal minui, the owner went over to Rabbi Abraham and says, Rabbi Abraham, please do Hafrashas Challah for me. He said, not like a direct, plain old minui. Almost everybody holds that he could pass on someone else's.